story begins with a young woman who walked into a grand corporate office for what was supposed to be just another job interview. She was calm, confident, and carried an air of quiet determination. Her appearance was professional, her resume impressive, and her preparation thorough. Yet despite all her qualities, one small detail about her caught the attention of the interviewers and completely altered the course of the meeting. On her arm, visible just below the sleeve of her neat blazer, was a tattoo. It wasn't a flashy or offensive design, just a personal mark, an emblem of her journey. But to those sitting across the desk, it became the sole reason to dismiss her. As she sat down, one of the panel members shifted uncomfortably. They glanced at each other, whispered quietly, and within minutes the atmosphere in the room turned cold. The questions were abrupt, the tone became dismissive, and before long they informed her that she would not be considered for the role. The reason was not her qualifications, her lack of experience, or her communication skills. It was the tattoo, something they deemed unprofessional and unsuitable for the company's image. With polite restraint, they suggested she leave. For a moment, she sat there in disbelief. The sting of rejection was not new to her, but the shallowness of the reason struck deep. She picked up her folder, thanked them for their time, and walked out with grace. But little did the interviewers know, this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. What the panel was blind to was the fact that this woman was no ordinary candidate. She was not desperately seeking a job. She was, in fact, the founder and CEO of the very company whose office she had walked into. The interview had been a test, a disguised opportunity to gauge the mindset and culture of her own employees, to see how they treated people who walked in with nothing but their skills, personality, and authenticity. She wanted to know whether her team was inclusive, progressive, and respectful. And unfortunately, what she discovered was disappointing. The irony of the situation is what makes the story so powerful. In a world that constantly preaches equality, diversity, and the celebration of individuality, here were professionals who judged a competent, well-prepared candidate on nothing more than body art. Tattoos have existed for centuries as expressions of culture, belief, and personality, yet even today, some organizations cling to outdated perceptions, associating ink with rebellion or unprofessionalism. In this story, the interviewers failed to look past their biases, and in doing so, they exposed the true flaws within their workplace culture. The emotional weight of the story lies in the woman's restraint. She did not lash out, argue, or belittle the panel for their decision. She left quietly, giving them the illusion of authority and power, but when the truth surfaced, that the woman they had carelessly rejected was actually the visionary behind the company, the shock was immeasurable. The same people who dismissed her as unfit were now faced with the harsh reality that their narrow-mindedness had not only embarrassed them but had also jeopardized their standing in front of the very leader whose principles they were supposed to uphold. What follows is the turning point of the narrative. The CEO revealed her identity, not out of spite, but as a lesson. She wanted her employees to understand the gravity of their mistake. A tattoo did not define someone's competence, work ethic, or intelligence. What mattered was skill, creativity, dedication, and the ability to bring value to the organization. By rejecting her over such a superficial detail, they had not only failed her test, but had also exposed the danger of prejudice lurking in their decision-making. The story resonates deeply because it mirrors the real struggles of countless individuals who face rejection and judgment based on appearance, culture, or lifestyle choices rather than their actual abilities. For many people, tattoos are not just decorations but carry stories of resilience, memories of loved ones, or symbols of identity. To strip someone of opportunity because of that is to deny the humanity that lies beneath. The brilliance of the story is in its poetic justice. Those who thought they were in control, those who sat with smug authority, were brought face to face with their own blind spots. The tables turned and the power dynamic shifted in the most unexpected way. Suddenly, the candidate they had looked down on was the very person who would decide their future. Some of them likely feared losing their jobs, others perhaps felt ashamed, and a few may have silently justified their actions. But the lesson was undeniable. True leadership demands seeing beyond the surface, and true professionalism lies in respect, not prejudice. For the CEO, this moment was more than just personal vindication. It was an opportunity to spark change within her organization. She used this incident to highlight the importance of inclusivity, open-mindedness, and acceptance in the workplace. She reminded her team that innovation and creativity thrive in diversity, that great ideas come from unique individuals who may not always fit the mold of outdated corporate stereotypes. By clinging to rigid notions of professionalism, they risked shutting out talent that could elevate the company to new heights. The story also opens up a broader conversation about societal perceptions. Why do tattoos, hairstyles, or personal expressions still dictate how people are treated in professional spaces? Why is appearance so often mistaken for competence? In a world where some of the most brilliant minds, artists, engineers, entrepreneurs, carry tattoos proudly, it is baffling that a piece of ink can overshadow years of experience and talent. This narrative becomes a mirror held up to society, urging people to confront their biases and challenge their assumptions. From a storytelling perspective, what makes this tale unforgettable is its dramatic twist. The shift from rejection to revelation carries the weight of irony and justice, the kind that leaves readers reflecting long after the story ends. It forces us to ask ourselves how many times we might have judged someone unfairly, how many opportunities were lost because we allowed prejudice to cloud our perception. It reminds us that greatness often hides behind ordinary appearances, and the world loses when it chooses judgment over understanding. The woman's tattoo, in this context, becomes more than body art. It becomes a symbol of resilience, of individuality, and of the silent power of those who refuse to conform to narrow expectations. It represents every person who has been underestimated, dismissed, or sidelined because they dared to be different. And in the end, it stands as a mark of victory, because the very thing that caused her rejection became the trigger for change within her company. What makes the story so inspiring is not just the moment of revelation, but the underlying message. Authenticity will always outshine prejudice. The CEO's decision to walk into that interview as a candidate was a powerful experiment. She allowed herself to experience firsthand what so many others go through, and in doing so, she gathered undeniable proof of the work that still needed to be done within her own walls. Instead of issuing policies from the top, she placed herself at the bottom and felt the sting of bias, which made her leadership even more empathetic and effective. In reviewing this story, one cannot help but feel a sense of satisfaction at the poetic justice delivered. Those who thought they held the power were humbled, and those who believe in authenticity and individuality were vindicated. The narrative leaves us with a powerful reminder that leadership is not about authority, but about vision, empathy, and the courage to challenge the status quo. As readers, we walk away from the story not just entertained, but also enlightened. We reflect on our own judgments, the unconscious biases we may carry, and the ways in which we might unknowingly exclude or diminish others. The lesson is universal. Value people for who they are and what they bring to the table, not for how closely they fit into an outdated image of professionalism. Ultimately, the story of the tattooed CEO is not just about an interview gone wrong. It is about the transformative power of truth, the strength of individuality, and the responsibility of leadership to break down barriers. It reminds us that authenticity is not a weakness, but a strength, and that true progress in any organization begins with respect for every individual, no matter how they choose to express themselves. And so, the tale lingers, a story of judgment and justice, of prejudice and revelation, of the silent strength of a woman who chose authenticity over conformity. It is a reminder that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places, and that those who underestimate others often find themselves facing the greatest surprises.